The village of Käsmu has a prominent place in the history of Estonian maritime and merchant shipping. The small coastal village developed into a unique maritime and merchant shipping center over the course of 3 generations. The fishing village developed into a village mainly of shipbuilders, ship owners, and sailors.
The Käsmu Bay, protected from winds by primeval forests on 3 sides of the world, has been a prerequisite for shipbuilding and seafaring for the people of Käsmu. On the western shore of the bay, near the village of Käsmu, the water quickly deepens, which made it possible to build and launch large sailing ships. The bay mouth is 3 kilometers wide. The average depth of the bay is 12 meters, and the water depth at the mouth of the bay is 27 meters. The bay, with its clay bottom and sheltered from the winds, was a suitable anchorage for ships. At the end of the era of sailing ships, Käsmu Bay was the most important wintering place for sailing ships in North Estonia. Large ships could also anchor here to shelter from storm winds and when the sea froze. In cold winters, ships were allowed to freeze in the bay, and in the spring, they were expected to be freed from the ice. Several dozen, and in some winters even more than 50, sailing ships have wintered in Käsmu Bay at the same time. The Käsmu Peninsula is the smallest of the 4 peninsulas in Lahemaa National Park. It is 6 kilometers long, 3 kilometers wide, and has an area of nearly 10 square kilometers. The peninsula borders Käsmu Bay to the east and Eru Bay to the west. Lake Käsmu is a shallow lake with an area of 43 hectares, located in the southern part of the Käsmu Peninsula, a few hundred meters from the Eru Bay. The lake is 1 kilometer long, half a kilometer wide, and 2 to 3 meters deep. The water in the lake changes constantly, as it is connected to both the Eru and Käsmu Bays by streams. The eastern tip of the Käsmu Peninsula has been popularly called Vana-Jüri Ots. A footpath leads to the tip of the cape, which you pass by 2 boulders, the Vana-Jüri stone, the larger of which is 5.5 meters high. Half a kilometer from the eastern tip of the Käsmu Peninsula is an elongated island called Sartneem, known as a nesting site for seabirds. Because the island's shores are covered with curly-leaved rosehip, it is popularly called Roossaar, or even Kuradisar for some unknown reason. The narrow western tip of the Käsmu Peninsula is named Palganeem. A pile of lucky stones, which had significant meaning for the Käsmu people, was located here until it was used by Soviet border guards to build an observation tower at the tip of the cape. Sailors who had safely returned to their home port from a long sea voyage brought a stone with their name and year there as a token of gratitude that another sea voyage had been safely behind them. Since 1807, Asperre Manor and the lands of Käsmu village have been owned by the noble Dellingshausen family. Since 1856, after the death of General Johann Eduard von Dellingshausen, Asperre Manor and Käsmu village belonged to his son, Baron Nikolai von Dellingshausen. In 1895, Baron Asperre Manor donated the manor to his successor, Eduard von Dellingshausen, who also became the last Asperre Manor owner. The first summer residents in Käsmu were the descendants of the Dellingshausen family, who had risen from the status of Tallinn merchants to the nobility. In 1840, the owner of the Asperre Manor discovered Käsmu as a summer residence for himself and built a family summer estate near the tip of the peninsula. After the death of the manor owner, his son Nikolai von Dellingshausen and his wife, began to use the summer manor. The summer house of the baronial family was destroyed in a fire after World War II for an unknown reason. In the Käsmu village gathering place, Kabelimai, there is a chapel built of country stones in 1846. The building called the General's Chapel was built as the burial place of the Aspera Manor owner, Edward Johann von Dellingshausen. In 1876, the general was reburied from the chapel to the family grave in the Haljala churchyard. In the 1980s, the chapel was in a dilapidated condition until it was restored in the late 1990s. The chapel houses a permanent photo exhibition by Eve Case of the people of Käsmu. Permanent settlement in Käsmu village arose in the 16th century when 9 families lived here. At that time, the village was mainly located between Vorkneme and Majakamai. Käsmu village was a village where the population was concentrated around the main street running through the settlement. The village street, which was once called Kulavahe Street, is now called Neeme Street. The village street, which had developed over centuries in a landscape of stone-sown land, was narrow, bordered by large stones. In places, the narrow village street was bordered by multi-ton stones dug into the ground. During the Soviet era, some of the large stones were removed with the help of construction machinery, and the village's main street was slightly widened. Narrow, parallel cross streets led down from the main street to the sea. The sandy and rocky coastal land did not allow for the family to feed themselves with grain cultivation and livestock farming. Potatoes and other vegetables were grown for their families on small, rocky fields. Grain was brought from inland villages where it was exchanged for salted fish. The main source of food for the Käsmu people was the sea. The Käsmu Bay was not rich in fish, so they went to the distant sea to catch flounder and herring. The Käsmu people also went fishing a couple of times a year around the islands near Hamina, where the conditions were better for fish spawning. The fishing was also accompanied by the smuggling of salt, as the expensive preservative was needed in large quantities for salting fish. Each Käsmu family was obliged to provide the manor with a certain amount of fresh and salted fish and to transport firewood to the beach. Until the beginning of the last century, the Geripallu Road was the only connecting road between Käsmu village and the villages inland. Before reaching the gravel road, Käsmu residents had to travel by horse-drawn carriage or on foot for nearly 6 kilometers on a soft and sometimes muddy forest road. The dirt road started from the Külavahete, crossed Kirikumegi, and headed towards Käsmu Lake, where it ran between the lake and Eru Bay. The road was drier and more passable in the pine forest. In the 19th century, there were marshy meadows at the head of Käsmu Bay. In the early years of the last century, alder trees were cut down, drainage ditches were built, and the construction of the Lahepohja Road, which runs along the seashore Tavosu, began. The prosperity of the Käsmu people in the first half of the 19th century was based on the transport of firewood to Tallinn and the transport of salt from Finland. Aspera Manor had 4 large timber boats with which the Käsmu men transported firewood to Tallinn. The trees were sawn and split in the forest and transported to the beach in winter.
In the spring, the firewoods were transported to the boats by horse-drawn carriages where they were reloaded. The firewoods were transported by boat to the schooners standing in the bay where they were loaded onto the ship. Käsmu farmers also raised capital by transporting bricks from the Vusu and Loksa brick factories to Tallinn, St. Petersburg, and Helsinki. The transport of cement from the Kunda factory and the transport of potatoes to Finland were also profitable. Sailing boats began to be replaced by that dared to sail further from the coast. The people of Käsmu bought the first sailing boats from Hamina shipbuilders in Finland. The sailing boats, which were usually 10 meters long and 3 meters wide, were not covered with a deck throughout. In 1887, the men of Käsmu had a total of 56 ships or boats, including 3 schooners, 7 small schooners, and 12 sailing boats. From 1830 onwards, the import of certain goods from Finland into the Estonian province was allowed without paying customs duties. This laid the foundation for barter trade, or friendly trade, between Estonians and Finns on the shores of the Gulf of Finland. Farmers and fishermen from Käsmu and the Hamina area in Finland acquired the necessary goods by exchanging them with each other. On one trip, one boat was allowed to transport a barrel of salt and a barrel of herring to Estonia. In addition, sailcloth, fishing nets, honey, wood tar, candles, and salted and smoked meat as much as the boat could carry. Goods intended for the Finns were transported to the boat in carts, lifted into boats, and driven alongside the ship where they were hoisted aboard the ship. The Finns brought rye, potatoes, peas, and hops from Käsmu. The same boat was used to bring goods taken by the Finns from the ship. Although the duty-free goods were intended for their own use, the Käsmu people made a profitable business by reselling them. Alongside the permitted trade, a clandestine salt trade also continued. Since local men lacked the skills to build larger ships, Finnish shipbuilders were brought to Käsmu to build additional ships. In 1889, the construction of schooners began on the shores of Käsmu village with the help of Finnish shipbuilders. Trees were sawn and split in the forest and transported to the beach in winter on sledges. Pine wood suitable for shipbuilding was transported by sledges from selected locations in winter. The trees had to be slender, straight, and without lower branches. Shipbuilding provided work for both local carpenters and blacksmiths. Since local blacksmiths lacked the skills to make anchor chains, anchors, and shackles, they were purchased from abroad. In 1891, the owner of the farm called Sepa Josep Klistenbrun began building his first large ship, a 3-masted schooner on the farm's seashore. In addition to the men of his village, Finnish shipmasters also participated in the construction of the ship. The ship was named after Salme Kristine, the younger daughter of Sepa Josep. The 3-masted, 36-meter-long schooner Salme was the first long-distance sailing ship in Käsmu and the entire Virumaa region, which also began sailing on the Atlantic Ocean. While sailing from Canada to England with a cargo of timber 23 years later, the old ship began to leak, the cargo displaced, the ship sank sideways and turned upside down. The crew was rescued from the sinking vessel by a passing passenger steamer.
Josep Christenbrun had 5 more large sailing ships built on the seashore of his farm. In 1899, the 3-masted schooner Julia was launched, which had good sailing characteristics. At the age of 20, the shipowner's nephew Gustav Christenbrun became the ship's captain, even before graduating from the Käsmu Maritime School. The following year, the 2-masted schooner Hermina was completed at the Seppa Farm shipbuilding site, and in 1901, the 2-masted schooner Lisa with a black hull. The ship was left on the same Seppa Farm beach in 1928 until storm waves overcame it. In 1902, the 2-masted fast brigantine Christenbrun was launched, which was designed more for ocean sailing. This sail ship also ended its life on the Seppa Farm beach. Between Vorknieme and Mayakame, there is a boulder called Lemeti Kivi, to which the Käsmu ships that had reached the end of their lives were attached with an anchor chain. Josep Christenbrun's last ship, the 3-masted schooner Annette, was completed in 1913. It was the first ship built with galvanized steel details in Käsmu. In the summer of 1942, the ship was sailing from Käsmu to Tallinn with a cargo of timber and hit a mine near Cape Juminda. Only the cook's boy escaped the shipwreck with his life. In addition to Seppa Farm, there was also a shipbuilding site on the shore of Tönikse Farm. At the Tönikse shipbuilding site, a blacksmith shop had been built on the pier for fire safety reasons. In 1890, farmer Jakob Kaskny built 2 2-masted sailing ships on the shore of his farm, the schooner Alexander and the schooner Julius. Around the turn of the century, Käsmu farmer Jakob Suksdorf built 3 2-masted schooners at the shipbuilding site called Käevu Valgama. In 1899, the schooner Polaris was launched, followed a year later by the schooner Edmund, and in 1901 by the schooner Adina. Edward Suksdorf, a graduate of the Käsmu Maritime School, was the mate and captain on the ships built by his father. By the turn of the century, Käsmu had become the largest shipping center in Lahemaa. Käsmu shipowners had a total of 49 large sailing ships, of which 6 were brigantines and barkentines, 35 small schooners, and 8 full-sized schooners. Sailing regattas were held in Käsmu Bay between 1895 and 1899, in which mainly local men participated with their sailboats. Usually about 20 sailboats took part in the sailing competition, intended for the common people. In addition to the people of Käsmu, the sailors were also accompanied by people vacationing in Käsmu. During the navigation season, there were nearly 150 Käsmu people at sea as captains, mates, sailors, or cooks. The sailors' wives did all the farm work, herded the cows, and took care of the children. To feed their families, women mainly fished in the Käsmu Bay. Older men who had already sailed went fishing further afield. Many Käsmu families practiced fishing together. Together, large and heavy fishing boats were pushed into the water, and with joint efforts, the boats with the catch were pulled ashore. Thomas Eintre, a school teacher, curate, and lighthouse keeper who was popular among the villagers, often helped. Both the poor and the rich catch of fish were divided among the participants according to their contribution.
In 1884, the Maritime School began its studies with 18 students in the Toniksa farmhouse owned by the farmer Jakob Kaskny. The number of students began to grow. It was impossible to continue studying only in one classroom. The chairman of the school committee, Josep Christenbrunn, had a large two-story school building built and began renting it to the Maritime School in 1887. Later, an extension was made to the building, and a viewing tower for educational purposes was added to the roof. The Maritime School had two classes, one for training short distance and one for long distance mates. In order to obtain a professional certificate, in addition to the knowledge and skills acquired at the school, it was also necessary to have several years of maritime practice. From 1895, the school also began to prepare long-distance captains. The Käsmu Maritime School was headed for a long time until 1930 by Captain Karl Ladens. In 1919 to 1931, teaching took place in a one-story stone building of the former border guard cordon. As a result of support from local residents and sailors, the Käsmu Maritime School was the best-equipped maritime school in Estonia, with teaching aids. In connection with the transition to steamships, the need for ship captains began to decrease, and the Käsmu Maritime School ceased operations in 1931. During its 47 years of operation, the Maritime School prepared 361 short-sea helmsmen, 148 long-sea helmsmen, and 94 long-sea captains. By the spring of 1920, the ship had its bows in place and the deck on by the autumn. The rigging of the sailing ship took place at the Loksa shipyard. Tormelind was a four-masted barkentine with a capacity of 457 gross registered tons. The length of the ship was 45.7 meters, the width 10.3 meters, and the draft was 4.1 meters. The ship, which had good seaworthiness, had a crew of 12 members. The sailing ship, considered the most beautiful in Estonia, attracted attention in every port. It also sailed across the Atlantic Ocean several times. In December 1937, the ship ran aground near the Hiu Shallow and sank in a severe heel. Six of the 9 crew members survived. The ship was repaired and converted into a motor sailboat in the floating dock of the port of Tallinn. The ship, taken over by the Germans during the war, was probably sunk in 1944 on a mine in Aalborg Bay. The ship's crew was rescued. Käsmu Bay was the home port for dozens of ships, which is why a merchant ship's sea voyage often ended with anchoring in Käsmu Bay. While the crew members were resting from the voyage, the ship was anchored in the bay. To ensure safe entry into Käsmu Bay and the anchorage area, a lighthouse needed to be built. The lighthouse's light did not have to be visible far, so a small, low home lighthouse was built with the Käsmu people's own funds. The lighthouse, built of wood and painted white, was completed in 1892 with funds raised from a fundraiser. At 8.2 meters above sea level, the lighthouse's light was the lowest in Estonia and could be seen at sea for only 6 nautical miles. The lighthouse is part of the Käsmu Maritime Museum, where you can see its exhibits. Initially, the light source was a kerosene lamp, and the light was concentrated by a dioptric mirror system. Since 1900, the lighthouse has operated with a flashing light. Later, an acetylene-powered beacon sent light signals to the sea,
which provided a visibility range of 13 nautical miles. In 1911, the Käsmu Merchant Shipping Sailors Society was founded, which began working in the premises of the Maritime School. The society was popular. Its membership included most of the residents of Käsmu village. The new building of the Sailors Society was completed with the support of donations and the income from organizing parties at the end of 1917.
The Society House had a large and spacious hall, which could accommodate almost all the villagers if necessary. There was an amateur drama club, plays and dance evenings on Saturdays. The dance evening usually began with a play, where the actors were members of the village drama club. The Sailors Society operated until the coming of Soviet era in 1940. The Society House was nationalized and became the Käsmu Community Center. Käsmu has never had a harbor sheltered from the winds, where ships could moor at the pier or quayside. Movement between the shore and sailing ships was exclusively by boats. The narrow and short piers built on piles in shallow water were only for boats. Several plans for the Käsmu Pier were prepared in 1923 to 1928. A stone pier was to be built on the Vurkneme, at the end of which there was to be a wooden pier supported on honeycomb boxes and facing across the bay. The length of the planned pier on the Vurkneme, including the stone pier, was to be 192 meters. A 9-meter-wide plank road was to be built on the pier, which would extend 2 meters above the water surface. In the end, it was decided to build a port in Vösu, where several sawmills and a brick factory operated. The growth of the prosperity of the Käsmu people contributed to the upbringing of new generations. Even at a young age, children in Käsmu were taught not to be afraid of the sea. Following the example of their fathers, the boys of Käsmu began to show an early interest in the profession of a sailor. While making and sailing toy ships, the boys dreamed of becoming sailors. The children of Käsmu shipowners and shipmasters mostly became future shipowners, captains and mates. The Käsmu church building was completed as a chapel in 1864. In the 1880s, the owner of the Thörnixa farm, Jakob Kaskny, donated a chandelier to the chapel. On his initiative, the stone wall of the chapel garden was also built in 1892. The altarpiece was donated to the church by Captain Predik Lepny, the owner of the Josti farm. The preacher and curate was Thomas Eintre, a schoolteacher who also performed the duties of a supervisor at the lighthouse. The Käsmu church has an organ made by organ master Johann Andreas Stein and originating from the Swedish Michli church in Tallinn, which is one of the oldest in Estonia. The 160-year-old sacral building has been kept in good condition. Many former sailors, farmers, and their family members from Käsmu are buried in the churchyard. Next to the cemetery gate is the Tiedemann gravesite, where Captain Oskar Tiedemann's wife, Anetta, and his late daughter, Signa, are buried. The bronze statue by sculptor Johan Raudseb, made in memory of his daughter in 1937, is considered one of the most beautiful cemetery sculptures in Estonia. The ship owners of Käsmu, accustomed to sailing ships, began to take an interest in motor sailboats in the early 1920s. In the early 1920s,
The ship owners of Käsmu, led by Oskar Tiedemann, purchased the four-masted motor schooner Madonia, built in Åland. The ship, which fell to the Germans as a war prize in 1941, was left unused in the port of Danzig until it became a wreck. No more sailing ships or motor sailboats were purchased, and all additional vessels purchased thereafter were used cargo steamers. Steamships were significantly more expensive than sailing ships, but their greater carrying capacity allowed them to carry many times larger loads. The founders and major shareholders of the shipping company were the sons of Jakob Christenbrunn, long-distance captains Gustav and Edvard Christenbrunn. An office was established on Vabadusa Square in Tallinn, and the long-distance captain and shipowner Oskar Tiedemann was elected as its manager. Josep Christenbrunn's eldest daughter Annette's husband was the founder and CEO of the Käsmu shipowners' tramp shipping business until 1940. The brothers, Captains Christenbrunn and Captain Gustav Prun, were also the shipowners with the largest shares. While farms and lands were being purchased elsewhere in Estonia, the people of Käsmula were buying ships. In 1919, the steel-hulled sailing ship named Carmen, which had sailed for 42 years, was converted in France into a steamer with 2 steam boilers. The purchase of the steamer, named Nemrak, laid the foundation for both the Käsmu Shipowners Association and the Käsmu Steamers era. The following steamers were named after the wives and daughters of the Käsmu shipowners. In 1927, the Käsmu shipowners purchased the steamer Hilda. The ship set sail from the port of Kemi, Finland, to the Gulf of Bothnia in 1938 with a cargo of timber. The ship ran aground and broke up on the Swedish coast. The crew was rescued. In 1928, the steamer Lena, purchased by the shipowners, was sunk 10 years later in a storm in the North Sea, carrying lumber. The crew was rescued by a German passenger ship. The steamer Linda was also acquired in the same year. The coal-laden steamer was sunk by a German submarine in the North Sea in February 1940. The lifeboats were damaged in the explosion, but the crew managed to escape thanks to a spare raft built from barrels. The steamer Minna, built in Scotland in 1923, was the most modern ship in Estonia when it was purchased in 1930. The ship, nationalized in 1940, sailed in the Estonian Maritime Shipping Company until 1963. In 1933, the Käsmu shipowners bought the steamer Boomback, built in Holland, and named it Sigrid. The ship sank in the spring of 1945 in Kiel as a result of an Allied bombing raid. The steamer Maria, built in 1909 and acquired in 1934, was the first ice-class steamship in the Estonian ship register. The ship sank in 1948 in the southern part of the Baltic Sea in the Fehmarn Strait after colliding with a mine. The crew managed to row to the German shore in lifeboats. In 1903, built in England, the cargo steamer Elna was purchased in 1935. With a capacity of 3,200 gross registered tons, the vessel was the largest cargo steamer of the Käsmu shipowners.
The ship sailed in the Far East with the Sakhalin Shipping Company until 1956. The cargo steamer Ella was purchased by the ship owners in 1937. On August 28, 1941, the steamer hit a mine near the Juminda Peninsula, and part of the crew perished with the ship. The steamer Hildur, purchased in 1938, was a fast, high-port timber transport ship. The ship, taken over by the Germans in Hamburg during the war, was decommissioned in 1945, hit by an airplane bomb in Ålesund and sunk. In 1939, Käsmu ship owners purchased the 15-year-old Danish-built steamer Madsen and named it Signe. During the nationalization of ships in 1940, the steamer sailed under the Honduran flag under the command of the Käsmu captain until 1968. In addition to buying shares in ships, Käsmu shipowners and ship managers invested their income in building new and modern, yet very practical residential buildings. Most of Käsmu captains' houses were built between 1900 and 1930. A captain's house usually has 3 rooms, a kitchen, and a spacious veranda with glass windows. Captains' houses were usually painted in light colors, often white. Captain and shipowner Oskar Tiedemann built the captain's house, considered the most luxurious and beautiful in Käsmu, on a plot of land separated from the Sepa farm called Lainela. Just before the war, Tiedemann had a large villa built in Tallinn, Nöm in the functionalist style. The villa has hosted high-ranking foreign guests such as the Shah of Iran, Indira Gandhi, and Mikhail Gorbachev. At the beginning of the last century, Käsmu also began to gain popularity as a summer resort. In the 1920s, summer visitors arrived in Käsmu and Võsu mainly by sea, as buses did not run to the coastal villages at that time. In 1921, the wheeled steamer Kungla began ferry services between Tallinn-Loksa, Käsmu, and Võsu. Since there was no port in Käsmu and Võsu, passengers were transported from ship to land by boats. The outbreak of World War II ended the successful shipping business of Käsmu shipowners that had lasted half a century. Goods could only be transported to non-belligerent and neutral countries. The warring countries began to detain ships and send them to ports for inspection, where they remained anchored for a long time and caused great damage to the shipowners. In the spring of 1940, only a few Käsmu ships went to sea. Most of the sailors stayed in Käsmu, as the war had closed the main shipping routes. The sailors who stayed home for the summer were something that had never been experienced in the village of Käsmu before. In order to find a job, some of the sailors started fishing. At the time of the nationalization of ships, the only Käsmu ship in the port of Tallinn was the steamer Maya. Later, 5 more steamers belonging to Käsmu ship owners that had been in foreign ports were handed over to the Red authorities. Dozens of sailors from the village of Käsmu lost their lives when their ship hit a mine or fell victim to an air raid. By the autumn of 1944, the number of villagers had decreased by a third. as many had left for the West to escape Soviet rule. After the establishment of Soviet rule, the beach was partially closed with a wire barrier, and fishing boats were taken under the control of the border guard. Käsmu remained in the border zone, where it was only possible to stay with a permit. In May 1949, the fishing collective farm named Liigate was founded in Käsmu, with 10 fishermen using 3 motorboats. During the collective farm years, a third of the villagers left in search of work, as collective farm work and fishing did not support their families. Mainly older people who made a living from vegetable growing, animal husbandry, and fishing stayed in Käsmu. During the German occupation, the construction of 2 sailing ships had begun at the tip of Vanajuri. In the autumn of 1944, the Käsmu Artel was founded to build boats and ships, and it was decided to build towed river ferries from the ship hulls. After a few years, the ferries were ready, but they could not be launched. The ferries were still falling apart on the seashore at the tip of the peninsula in the early 1970s, until they were finally set on fire by someone. For the next half-century, Käsmu became a holiday village for villagers, children's summer camps, salespersons, and creative people. The Union of Consumer Cooperatives acquired the building of the Maritime School and several large captains' houses, which were used as holiday homes for its employees. Additional buildings were added to the Lainla complex, built on the lands of Sepa Farm, and it became a popular pioneer camp for the children of workers of the Union of Consumer Cooperatives. The Tiedemann captain's house, which had been used as a pioneer camp, was completely destroyed in a fire in 1964. The only former building that has survived is the sauna house, built in 1925. The 11-room Doniksa farmhouse became the holiday home of the Tallinn grocery store. The village center was the bus terminal, with a consumer cooperative store built in the Laurimäe farmhouse. The cafe, which operated in the Rannamendi, the recreation center building during the summer, was popular among both Käsmu residents and vacationers. The Käsmu Maritime Museum welcomes visitors in the former Border Guard and Maritime School building, built in the last decade of the 19th century. The building has been used by the Tsarist Empire, the First Estonian Republic, and the Soviet Border Guards.
Käsmu muuseumist võib igaüks midagi leida oma jaoks. Käivad siin erinevatest riikidest, 75 riiki on tulnud inimesi. Ja siis minu eesmärk on esimese asjana, ma küsin ikka, mis riigist nad tulevad. Ja siis püüan rääkida seoseid, mis on Käsmul ja siis selle riigiga. Et selleks on mul postkaardi kollektsioon iga riigi kohta, kus on merd. Ja meremehed said koju saata ainult postkaardiga, muud kontakti koduga ei olnud. Et saatis kirja või postkaardi, et olen sadamas ja tervis on korras ja et järgmine sadam on see, kuhu võib järgmise kirja saata.
The exhibits of the Maritime Museum open up the history of Käsmu village, Käsmu people's shipbuilding, merchant shipping, and captain's village to those interested. The museum collection reflects the development of the village, fishing, smuggling, shipbuilding, merchant shipping, and the training of ship captains. In the museum's lobby, you can see ship and boat models, old sea charts, and photographs about the history of Käsmu village. Among the exhibits are maps, compasses, sextants, chronometers, ship models, paintings, and other maritime-related items.
Ja mul on muidugi olemas ka atlas 17. sajandist, kus võib iga riigi kohta midagi näidata. See on Mauritiuse atlas, koopia, originaal on 1,60 m on lehe pikkus, siin on 80. See on Saksamaal tehtud koopia ja siin on maailma atlas ja ma võin igale külalisele midagi näidata.
Wooden tools used in shipbuilding are also on display. In the fishing room, you can see various fishing equipment, such as hooks, traps, nets, and everyday items of fishermen and farmers. The hall room presents the museum's most valuable and special exhibits.